Okay, so welcome to Belfast Wheel. Today's guest is Donna Kennedy. Donna's a six times best-selling author. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology with honours and is also a practicing psychologist. But as we were just chatting there, as wind that down a bit. Donna's main profession is she's a professional speaker and mentor. She's been given seminars all over the world, and she's also did talks at Google, and she also has a new book coming out, BeLIFE, or BeLIEf, isn't that right? There it is. Yep. So BeLIFE or BeLIEf,
BeLIFE for me.
and that's available now. Donna, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Um, just just obviously just to start off with, um, obviously you deal with people who've overcame adversity. You share those stories. You had to come over quite a bit of adversity yourself in your early years. Would you be able to go over that for us, please?
Sure. I suppose the reason I like to help people who've overcome adversity really and who are even going through adversity is because I know what it's like to be there, and I wish that nobody else would be there either. So for me, there's no greater joy than seeing somebody come out the other side smiling. It all began, I guess, my interest in psychology began kind of around the age of 17 or 18. But before that, I had gone through quite a few challenges. I had been raped at 7 by somebody who came to our home. It wasn't any of my family. It was just a visitor who came to my home. So obviously that's a big deal for somebody to deal with. And if you don't have the tools, as many people are not born with the survival guide, I don't think anybody is, unless you have the tools to deal with something like that, it's going to eventually take its toll. So at about 12, obviously my confidence had gone really down. I was quite withdrawn, and I was being bullied a bit at school. And basically I was on my way home one day from school, and I came across this magazine, as daft as it sounds, but I did. And I looked at this magazine. It was one of those like that you find in doctor surgeries. And it said that there was a girl on it and she had starved herself. I don't know why, but in my mind I thought, maybe if I do that or I lose a bit of weight, people will like me more. Which logically doesn't make any sense, but humans are not logical. We're emotional first. And I did lose 6 pounds, but I couldn't stop. It was like I had got on a roller coaster, sat in and just pressed go. And I just could not stop. And I was doing crazy amounts of exercise. My whole day revolved around exercise. It's almost like it's a substitute for food. So it just wasn't eating. And eventually it kind of escalated quite quickly. And I went down to half the weight I am now, I'm 5'10", I went down to 5 stone. So obviously my organs were starting to shut down a little bit, and I went into a very short coma. But nonetheless, at that time I thought, right, okay, well, I'd probably taken it a bit too far. And I suppose a long story short, thankfully, I did get better. That's a whole other interview in itself, I suppose. And I got back. I was back in school, socializing, had learned a lot of skills to help me navigate the world as we know it. And I was doing very well. Then I decided I wanted to do psychology so I could help other people. And I got into psychology, a place in college, and I started to work really hard, and I was top of my class. I had a part-time job. I was going out. I was doing all the regular things that people do. At that stage, I would have been almost 20. And I was in a car one day, and somebody crashed into me. And when I was a passenger, I was in a little mini city, and at the time there was no seatbelts, and it was a very small car. So I basically hit my head, and I started to experience kind of dreaminess maybe a few days later. And about 2 weeks later, I said to my mom, this just is something I knew wasn't obviously psychological. I've been through that and done all that. But it just wasn't feeling right. And the only way I could say it to my mom was that I felt dreamy at times, and I was kind of losing track of time and things like that. And she had recognized there was a problem. She said, look, let's go to the doctor. So I went in, and the doctor said, well, it was a locum actually. My normal doctor wasn't there. And she said, you should take antidepressants. And I said, but I'm not depressed. Now, genuinely at that time I wasn't. I kind of got my life back together. So she said, well, take them anyway. And she obviously kind of had knew my history from when I was younger and kind of thought, well, it must be this, without investigating anything further. So then I went for psychiatric assessment, and again they were jumped to conclusions, and they basically said they had to commit me, and I stayed. I was a danger to myself, all this and the other. Within 3 months, I was on 14 different medications. So the person you see here is not the person that you would have seen back then. I was the stereotype psychiatric patient with the bulging eyes and the dribbling and, you know, all that kind of slurry voice and very heavy walk. And eventually my parents actually, it was their insurance. They couldn't get me into a private hospital because the insurance plan they had didn't cover it. And also because the doctors had said I had to stay there, didn't help. So eventually my actual doctor ticked a few nice boxes and got me into a private hospital in a way that was quite nice. So I got in there and they basically monitored me for a while. And then my dad was very frustrated at this point because they actually had diagnosed me at that point with schizophrenia. They knew as well as I did I didn't have schizophrenia. Yeah. I had been experiencing mumbles in my head because obviously I'll tell you what I actually have. So my dad was very frustrated and he just said to the new psychiatrist, he said, look, Donna was perfectly normal. Yes, she had the things that were going on in her childhood, but she got through all that and she was perfectly normal. She was going out, her jobs, college, everything, functioning. And surely this had something to do with the accident. And the psychiatrist said, what accident? So it wasn't actually written in my file. Neither was the scans of my brain that were taken. There was an MRI and a CAT scan taken of my brain. And there was a hematoma showed in my left temporal lobe, which is bruising of the brain. So he basically said, we're going to run some tests, take her off the medication that she's on and monitor her for the next week or so and see what happens. So they did. So fast forwarding again, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, which I do have. He thought that fairly quickly, actually, on the first day. He said to my dad, based on the symptoms, and he thought, this is what I think that she has. So, of course, they come up to me and they told me I had epilepsy. And I was having none of it. I know what epilepsy is. This is. I said, I want proof. And in fairness to him, he got the nurses to go down to the hospital library and he brought up documents about this thick, just like I would have seen in college, the A4 stuff all stuck together. And I just went through and it was like tick, 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 tick. All the symptoms were there. And at that point, I was angry, but I was upset. I felt like kind of 6 months in total, because that's what it was taken from my life. And I thought, right, after I felt sorry for myself for maybe an hour, I decided I'm going to have to do something about this, because it was New Year's Eve and I love fireworks. Yeah. And I was basically looking out the window and I could see these like pathetic speckles in the sky in the city. And I was about 20 minutes from the city, but I could still see them, very tiny. And I was not impressed. So I was like, how am I going to get out of here? Because I'm in a psychiatric unit. So thankfully, with the psychiatrist's help and you know, altering different medications, whatever. So I sat on my bed and I thought, right, I'm going to have to come up with a plan, because at that point I'd lost my place at college, which they since gave me back, obviously. Yeah. I had lost my job because I was helping pay my way through college. So I got a part-time job and my dignity went down the drain. So I thought I'm going to have to do something. So I decided, well, the traditional approach probably wouldn't work for me because I'd been there before. And in this case, I thought, no, it's not going to be enough. Because I suppose when you get knocked down once, it's hard. But when you get knocked down a second time, although people may say, oh, it'll be easier because you're used to it, it actually was harder. So I thought, how am I going to get back my life? And I thought, I wonder if I could find people who would overcome adversity and I could copy their strategies. Maybe I could get back on track. So kind of people were like people who, I didn't care what they did for a living. So people maybe who had, you know, they started off really bad, or they left school, or they'd, you know, something in their background or something like that. And they went on to become like billionaires, or they went on to become Olympic athletes or top nutritionists or, you know, top musicians. I thought, well, there has to be something there. So I started to study them. And my mom had been reading me plenty of books. So I started off with the ones that she had, which were things like Chicken Soup for the Soul, written by Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, and Road Less Travelled, and all of those kind of books. So I started with those. And I started reading them and thought, actually, I feel like I'm a little bit on track now. And then I started to be grateful for things. I started to write out 10 things I was grateful for. It's something my mom always taught me to do. And then I suppose little by little, as I got better in my life back, I started to go to workshops and seminars. And ironically, now a lot of those authors are good friends of mine. So actually, you may have saw, you know, I did an interview 2 weeks ago. It was a joint interview with Mark Victor Hansen. So And I said to him, you were planted in my life at some point for a reason, and now we're still here. So, yeah, so at that point, then I just decided as I got my life back, I became confident. I learned a lot of strategies about the mind, but not just in the textbook fashion. It was more strategies that these people were using that were kind of, in a way, uneducated, if you like, or people who wouldn't have had the best start. So it wasn't like they were, you know, giving all the stuff we were learning in college was, and no disrespect to college because I have a degree, but it was really a lot of theories and most of the people were dead. So there wasn't, I know that sounds terrible, but where's the practical information? That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I started to learn about the mind, and yeah, here I am. So I help other people now, and I've been there and I've done that. So anything I do works.
One of the questions I have, as I obviously pre-interview, I try and do as much research as I can. And this is a thing. It's a subject that kind of came up with another interview, and basically about trauma. A lot of people think, oh, well, that happened to that person 20 years ago. They're over it now, but it's not. I find from personal experience and also from interviewing some of my other guests, the trauma they experienced maybe 30, even 40 years ago, it casts such a long shadow. And what some people find is you play things out unbeknown to you. You play things out based on what happened to you. So my question obviously is, how how can you reduce that impact? Obviously, you can't go back, you can't change history, and that what happened to you makes you who you are. People often ask, would you, if you had time machine, would you go back in time, change X, Y, and Z? And you go, no, because it made me who I am. I'll be a completely different person. But how can we? How can somebody control the negative, that long-lasting negative effects of a traumatic experience?
Well, I suppose firstly, a lot of people do ask me, would I go back and change the past? And most people's answers that you find that are kind of similar to me would say no, because it's made me the person I am today. Actually, I would go back and change the past quite happily. I would go back there and change it. However, I realize that I can't. So based on that fact, I have to decide, am I going to live my life in the past, or am I going to just keep rehashing what I've already done or what I've already had? Because I'm essentially, if you're looking back at your past all the time, you're essentially carrying it with you into your future. So that's the first thing I had to realize, and it really was a choice. Am I going to stay stuck in it, or we're going to move out of it? And I learned a lot about, even with neuroscience and quantum physics and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that, you know what, we're actually, yes, we have cells and we have cellular memories. So in a way, those memories are stored in our cells. However, what we do with them will depend on how we feel. So I can represent an event in my mind. Well, I'll give you actually a perfect example. You have, and these are studies done on this. So you have two people that go through the exact, in this case, we'll just say car accident, the exact same car accident. One comes out of the car accident and says, oh my God, you know, I nearly died. Who'd miss me anyway? And another person comes out and says, oh my God, I nearly died. Now I've got to change my life, make sure it's worth it. So it really depends on how you represent it in your head, not necessarily events that happen. Events that happen cause you pain, but how you represent them and react to them, or how you represent them will cause how you react to them. So for me, I had to re-represent all the events in my life, and I had to drop any negative emotion out of it, which I did. And there are techniques to do that, very useful techniques actually. But so you do, you know, you acknowledge fully your past, but you don't live in it. And you understand that your story is not your identity. I'm not my story. I've had a set of experiences, as have everybody else. I mean, you look at everybody's life and pain is relative, because what'll hurt maybe, you know, a person, a 30-year-old woman may not hurt somebody that, you know, their level of pain may not be the same, say, somebody who's a 10-year-old boy or a 90-year-old man. It's all relative. So it's really up to us as to how much of that we take on, or how much do we let go. You know, so there's a lot of stereotypes, you know, like, do you forgive, or can you let go, or does it still traumatize, and all that kind of stuff. But really, when you take all of that out of it, really what it comes back to is, how are you holding that experience in your mind? Or if you are holding it in your mind, what emotions have you tagged to it that you keep rehashing? And if, for example, if you're, there's a part of the brain called the limbic system, and I invite anybody who's listening to this to learn about it, because it is basically the house of the majority of our behavior. And it's the emotional programming that goes on there, and the emotional responses and the firing. You've probably heard the fight or flight response, part of that limbic system. It's not one structure, it's a collection of structures. So it's part of the limbic system that fires that. But it's very much in line with associations. So you could go, for example, to a horror movie, and you know consciously that they're only actors. There's probably a green screen there. There's special effects. You may even have seen one of the actors in a comedy. Yet, and no guys will admit to doing this, but you could be at the cinema, you know, and your eyes are, your hands over your eyes, and your blood pressure, if you were, you know, hooked up to a monitor or a phenopress, your heartbeat, and it goes up, and you're reacting in your body as though it's happening for real. So that part of the brain on a conscious level cannot tell the difference between what's real or imagined at an unconscious level, should I say. So we can know that we're sitting in a cinema watching a movie. We're very conscious of that. And we're conscious of going, oh my God, they gave me a fright. So it's not really that, you know, but according to our body and our mind, it doesn't have that differentiation, so it just fires the response. So the reason I'm saying that is, if you're constantly picturing in your mind stuff that happened, essentially your body is responding in the exact same way as though it's happening again.
Yeah.
So there is a school of therapy that you rehash over and over and over again. You know, you go through it, you go ins and outs, the feelings of whatever, and you look at that, and at the end of maybe 2 or 3 years, the person is not significantly better off, because their brain hasn't learned that that's an experience, that yes, we recognize it, but we no longer need to fire chemicals, or we no longer need to fire the fright response or the flight response or the panic, because it doesn't have that association. So that's the key for me, was I had to drop the association that I had with it. Have I ignored it? Absolutely not. You know, but at the end of the day, I can't change it, but I'm not going to bring it into my future. I'm not going to keep rehashing it over in my mind. Or, you know, it's the same as, I'm sure, if you have experiences yourself and you keep talking about them in a negative way, you're not going to feel better. Yeah. You know, so you have to reframe it in your head and see it differently, and see yourself stronger than your story. So that's how I see myself now. I actually see my story is just a part of my life. It's not me, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the things that years ago, you would never have heard about people talking about what they went through, unless it was one of the mainstream, like TV shows or papers, that maybe they had somebody in and this person was very successful and they happened to drop it in the interview. And I know it's good that people are talking more, people coming forward, talking about things they went through. There is that, I suppose there is that danger of it being almost comfortable living in that kind of victim state. You kind of like, you wear like a favorite coat every day. So obviously, again, telling what you're saying, it ties in with like, you hear people talking about visualization drills. So if you're playing over a negative reel of life events, you basically, what you're saying is basically try and change that reel to more positive things that you want to aspire to.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it like a approach either. I mean, we need to be real here, but at the end of the day, sometimes, and I can say this, and I may get comments on this, but I can say, because it's my own truth and I've been through it, so I'm just going to say it based on my own personal thing. I was quite content being in my anorexia behavior. Honestly, I hated it. I hated the pain. I hated the bed sores. I hated the headaches, the fainting. I hated all of that. So on the surface, if somebody said to me I liked it, I'd just say to them they're absolutely off their head. But the reality is it served a purpose for me. Now, if we look at it in hindsight, for me, I mean, look, everybody has human needs. We all have certain things we need to have met in balance. And if our needs are taken away, and even one of them, the natural thing for our brain to do is to look for a source to fulfill that need, even if it's an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
So when your needs are fulfilled, you feel content. Not necessarily happy, excited, or elated, but you feel content. Until you find a good, productive source to fulfill your needs, you can remain in behavior that isn't useful and feel quite comfortable within it. So I guess I always liken this to a plant. A plant needs water, air, sunlight, etc. But if you take away one of the plant's needs, people would say, well, what if you don't water the plant? People will naturally say, well, it dies. In actual fact, it doesn't first. What it does is it could potentially die if it keeps not getting its needs met. But the first thing it does is it starts to take water up from anywhere around it that it possibly can. It'll even take it from itself and look totally miserable doing it. But it's creating a state of desperate equilibrium, desperate calm, because of a situation that is not within its control. If it doesn't get light, it'll turn towards the nearest source of sunlight, looking totally miserable doing it, but it's doing everything it can to get its needs met. So we don't come into this world, and as I said to you at the beginning, we don't come into this world with the survival guide for our needs. So therefore, we're constantly looking for a way to fulfill them. You take a child, to get attention is one of our needs. Like everyone needs some sense of recognition. You take a child, you don't give them attention, they'll soon start to act up. Now, do they like doing that? Of course not. But they do what it takes to get their needs met. So, we can talk about mental wellness, mental illness, all we like, and being open about it. And being open about it is fantastic. However, the frame within the way it's set to me isn't useful, because we're allowing people, yes, talk openly about your problems, but then what? We're allowing people to be talking openly about the problems. We're not giving them any solution. So the problem with that is we keep people in a place that they don't like, but now that they're open about, but they're openly comfortable and familiar within a situation. And it's very, very hard to let go of something if you can't replace the needs. So in order for me to feel that I had control back in my life, I had to find a healthy way of putting control in my life. And now that I do have a healthy way of putting control in my life, I no longer need the anorexic behavior.
Yeah.
So I have no desire to go for it. You take any behavior that anybody does on an emotional level that's not useful, and I guarantee you it is a direct correlation between their needs not being met, one or more. And once you get that need, and I've done it a million times with people, you get those needs put back in place in healthy ways, suddenly the addictions go. It's not that the person has to, fight for it. They actually go because they have no need for them. Suddenly the isolation, wanting to be on your own or wanting to be just on social media and block everybody out, the need for that goes because you get your needs fulfilled in a different way. Yeah. So it really is about creating balance in your life and creating a representation of it that's very real, but that it's not just, I feel bad. That's wonderful for acknowledging that, but what are we going to do about it? And I think that's the thing that is actually quite dangerous, I think, at the moment, is that people are talking about mental wellness and mental illness so much, but they're leaving a massive void. So those people are basically, they're left there, swimming or drowning, whatever way you want to look at it, in misery and quite content to be there, not happy, but they're content because it keeps serving the purpose that they can't get met. So I think we need to teach people more tools. If something bothers you, what do you do with it? If you're upset, how do you react to that? If you're not sure how to socialize, which I wasn't, I was afraid to cross the road on my own. And if you're afraid to do that, well, it's all very well me saying, actually, I'm afraid to cross the road on my own. I feel really emotional. Great, Donna, fantastic, well done, amazing for being open about that. Now, then what? Yeah. We have to teach people how to, in that case, walk across the road on your own, be able to connect to other people. If you had told me to do this, back then, I would have preferred, as I say, to chew on glass. I would not do an interview. I would not, you must be joking. I couldn't even speak in public. And I had to learn that bit by bit and practice those skills. There's so many people at the moment, Jonathan, they're out there and they're all talking about mental illness and they're doing absolutely nothing productive about it. So you have lots of teenagers, for example, or you have lots of the stereotype, a man who can't, yes, they're open about it, but they commit suicide. Because there's almost a way of you leave yourself wide open and exposed and there's no help there. What do? You stop swimming and you drown. So I think as responsible professionals, and even for yourself, you're on here, you're in a role to give people the tools, the skills, the practicing thing. This is what you got to do and you got to practice it often, the accountability, the check-in, all of those things are necessary for long-term wellness, not just for Mary Poppins. I'll give you a high five and everything will be fine for 2 weeks. You know, and I take this quite seriously, you know, and people say, you know, that phrase, like, don't take your life so seriously. I say, absolutely do take your life seriously. Have loads of fun in it, but take yourself seriously. Like, you have a purpose here. You have meaning. You have a right to be on the planet. So, you know, and your life matters for something. So make it count. And if you need to learn strategies, be humble enough, you know. And a good friend of mine, John Boyle, many people know John, but he taught me something years ago, would have been about 15 years ago. And he said, become teachable. And I thought, actually, you know what? That is the best piece of advice that you can give anybody. Is to take the I know everything out of it and become humble enough to become teachable. Let somebody show you, and take your pride out of your back pocket and just say, look, I'm an open book. Show me what you got and let me practice and see if it works. That's what I did. I had to put pride away and ego away, and I had to learn strategies that I didn't know. Ultimately, I didn't know them. And was it uncomfortable? Yes. But even if you think about small things, you know, you probably have your side of the couch that you sit on, and dare anyone else sit on it, it's like your chair, or that's my mug. That's, you know, we get familiar very, very quick with things. Yeah. So we become familiar and content as opposed to feeling excited and fulfilled in life. And I want people to feel fulfilled and excited. That means getting real with them, getting honest with them, and saying, look, I'm not going to feel sorry for you. I'm going to show you I will feel huge empathy for you, and I will support you in every single way that I know how and that I know that you need to. But I'm not going to feel sorry for you and let you swim in your story. Yeah. And that's, I guess, what I do at the moment, which I know I'll get a few comments probably on this now about this. You don't know the way I feel. The reality is, yes, I do. I've been there. So I'm saying it from a very real place. And sometimes you have to get real with people. That's the way people change in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, I know it's as you say, you could literally do hours on this. And I know we don't have that time. If I could put you on the spot and ask, basically, as you said, it's everyone's kind of coming out. They're saying, this happened to me, this made me feel this way, this affected my life in such a matter. So it's almost like as you said, we're leaving these people on like a cliff edge. Like, well, where do I go from here? Mm-hmm. If there's anyone watching and they're in that position, is there anything? What would you say to them to start moving forward to find that new ground beyond from acknowledging how a situation or an event has made them feel?
Well, the first thing I would say is they're here for a purpose, and I've learned that, and I've learned it for so many people. They're here for a purpose. They have meaning. Whether they realize it or not is a different story. So the first thing is that is a fact. They're here for a purpose. So if anyone feels like they're going to jump off a cliff edge, or they're going to engage in a behavior that's not useful, you've got to realize that is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Any problem can be solved, but it has to be solved. And once it's solved, then you can get your purpose and you can understand what that is. But to just waste somebody who could potentially impact people in the most lovely ways is a waste. I mean, I often liken life to a jigsaw, and each one of us is a part of it. But if you're missing from that, it screws up the whole picture. So, we want, if the person here is listening, we want you here because you can add value. You might not think you can, but I can tell you 100% you can add value, and you have purpose and you have meaning. But the key is to understand that your story is not your identity. You can choose it to be or not. And I choose that my story is not my identity, and I'm bigger than it, and I'm more than it. And I'm going to focus, no matter how small, even a tiny step. And I often say this to people, do you think it's possible to create a 1% change in your life today?
Yeah.
1% is doable.
Yeah.
So if you were to just focus on that 1%, this time next year, you're 365% better in your life. That is impressive. Not just to see the bigger picture and I can't reach that. Instead, say, what do I need to do right now, today, in this moment to make this moment better? Do I need to call somebody? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to just take time out and go somewhere else? even if it's take yourself physically from that cliff edge and go somewhere else where you know that there's people there, and sit there where there's people there and write stuff out. You know, write it out if you have to, but connect in a different way. Connecting to death is not, it's not a good solution. A good solution is connecting to life. You were the miracle, you're the one that made it. So that's the reality of it. So, you know, are you going to just throw away that miracle, or are you going to actually connect to it? And then, you know, I mean, and I'm not plugging the book here, but I'm just going to say it. I have that virtual background there, just it's there all day. That book, on the title, I have BeLIFE or BeLIEf. And if you look at it, it's the same word, the letters are just rearranged differently. And in every belief, there is a lie. And in order for us to become life, we have to drop out that lie. And we tell ourselves lots of lies based on conditioning that we've had from day dot up to now. And it's about recreating beliefs and understanding, you know, that actually a lot of what you were told from parents, school, media, friends or not friends, whatever, they're lies. They're just versions of their truth. Yeah. So how about setting from like a blank slate? This is what I said. Everything is totally screwed up. I'm absolutely screwed. Yeah. Now, what do I do about it? I either sink or I swim. I decided I'm going to actually create a blank slate and work in a teachable way up from ground level. And I did. Was it easy? Sometimes it was a 2-step back, 1 step forward. But as long as I keep going in small baby steps in the right direction, just focus on the small steps, you'll get there.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely, as you're saying, we get, growing up, you get a lot of information through at you, good information, bad information. It can have a really long-lasting impact. Going back to the book, BeLIFE or BeLIEf, how did that's your latest, that's your recent book. How did that book come about?
Well, I've written books myself. Obviously, just I'm the only one in them. But so many people have come to me at seminars, I run seminars, and said to me, you know, I have a story, I'd love to go on stage. And you can't have everybody on stage. And although everybody has a story, essentially it's not really just about your story. It's about what you teach people. What can you, like, they're there for, you know, an attendee comes not because of the speaker. The attendee comes because what can I learn from here? That's why they pay, or that's why they invest their time, or whatever it is. So there's a lot of people who have stories, but it needs to be held within a way that it teaches somebody something. And not everyone can do that. So I did a collaboration, first of all, with a group of women, and I did another one then with a group of women as well. It's purely because I was running a women's summit at the time. I still run it, but this particular event. And I decided to do the book. So then I had done 2 of those, and then BeLIFE or BeLIEf basically came about because a lot of men had asked me also about being in a book. But most people want to write a book, or they say someday I will, but they don't because they don't know how to. So I learned strategy to actually write a book, and I practiced it and then refined it. So I teach all the authors that are in the books, I actually teach them how to write their chapter, and I actually hold their hand right the way through it. So I know the good structure. There's a certain amount of words, there's a certain way that you have to ask the question and answer system, etc. So the main purpose of the book is for each person to look for the nuggets within their story that are useful to the reader. And rather than it just be a woe is me, say your story, but make sure you give the learnings, the teachings, because it is not about us. Like that book, that's no longer about us. Yes, we wrote it, but that book now, that can sit on the shelf forever, or it can be given to somebody and can transform their life. And I don't say that lightly. I put a very personal part of my story in that, I suppose a scene of a story. But that's not what the book is about. The book is about, this is my story, but here's what I learned, and here's what you can learn, and here's how you can do it. That's the key, is to teach people how to do something, not just tell them all about, you know, how awful it is for us. People don't want to know that. They want to know, how can you help me? And people are crying out at the moment, chanting to get help. They really, I mean, I'm inundated with messages for people looking for the how. They've told everyone they have mental issues, but it's not enough. So the book essentially is a tool. It's not the answer for everything, but it is a good tool because there's 20 people in the book. And also John Boyle writes a part of it, and he used to have alcohol problems. There's people in that there was drug addiction, one person had. There there was a few people who had contemplated suicide very seriously. There was somebody who had been bankrupt and had to go home and tell, their partner, well, this is potential, and they might lose their home. And one of them was homeless. There's so many. Eating disorders is another one. Self-belief is another one. There's so many different aspects of it. So there's something in it for everybody. But ultimately, the core is how can you be the best version of yourself using strategies that work in real life. And the strategies are shared in the book. Then it's up to people to do them. I mean, there's exercises within the book, as you can see. I'll just show you very quickly. Like, there's exercises there for people to fill in. So it's not just a little, let's entertain you for a while. This is a serious book. We wrote it because we know exactly where people are. We've all been there. So we know exactly where people are and what they have to do. And I think the whole mental wellness and illness thing has become almost like an in vogue thing at the moment, which it's not. It was always there. It's not suddenly that more people are mentally ill. It's just we're actually talking about it. But now it's time to do something about it. And that's what I hope to do. And that with the book, that's what I hope to do, is that especially now, people need to have belief that they can do more. They can become more than their circumstance. We're on restrictions level 5 at the moment. But the reality is we can't change that. So, are we going to sit there and become fearful and, feel that the world is going to collapse? The reality is I could walk in front of a bus tomorrow. You have to, you have, not obviously intentionally, but I could die in another way. But the reality is you have to look at, how can I make my life the best version of me and for the people who matter? People give their time just for nothing. They really do. They don't. I mean, I'm giving you my time here because I know it's valuable. I mean, I looked at what you do. So obviously this message hopefully will reach, if it reaches one person, to me, it doesn't just help one, it affects a potential generation after that.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons why I started Belfast Whale was when I said not going to bore people listening, but when I went through a rough time in the past, I remember reading through people's stories, and one of them was a guest on this show, and it does really help. And I think the other thing I also want to touch on that you've highlighted in all your interviews and all the stuff I've read about you is to take action. It's like you said about you did your degree. It wasn't just the degree was obviously a lot of academic stuff, but without giving you the tools to go, well, how do I you discovered this, but how do I put this in the action? How do I make this work for people? I think that's, as you showed in the book there, it's really important for people to take action, not just read it and go, that was a lovely book, put in the bookshelf, but to use it as a necessary tool to hopefully change their life. Obviously, I know we're constrained by time today. What out of all your years, obviously up to now, what would be one of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way, or even a few lessons that you've learned?
First of all, I would say you're good enough. That's one. That's one thing that a lot of people struggle with. Excuse me. Are they good enough? Are people going to judge me? So I'd say, first of all, you're good enough. Stop comparing yourself to other people. They'll never measure up either way, you to them or them to you. I would also say get over yourself. Sometimes we can start the self-talk of convincing and justifying our reasons for staying the way that we are. You've got to get over that. You just cop on. I mean, my mother had a great phrase, it was cop on to yourself, which in hindsight, I should have listened to it. And also there is the be easy with yourself in a loving way. It's about giving yourself the time that you need and being okay to ask for help. And I think another part is that it's become teachable. Value your time. People just, they let people just take advantage for nothing. It's, it is about valuing your life. And if you can take care of this moment, the next moment will be better. And take care of that moment, the next moment will be better. That's what it's about. It's not about having you look at someone out there, they seem to have it all. And social media, by the way, is a disaster, because I like social media, don't get me wrong, but I don't like the aspect of that it creates this illusion of people who have perfect lives. That it's just, who puts up a bad picture of their Christmas dinner unless it's me, it's cremated. So it's a disaster. But you know, people don't put up their bad pictures, they put up all the nice stuff. So we're looking at that and we're thinking, that's what, you know, people's lives are like. Well, my life is quite crap in comparison. Everyone, listen, everybody has, I'm sure, now I'm wearing jeans at the moment with this, but I'm sure there's people wear, you know, their pajamas. We all get up with scraggly hair. I brushed it today, but I got up and it was like a bird's nest. Everybody does that.
Yeah.
So I think it's about getting back to being real and just, you know, we're all people. We're all, the rest is I mean, I won't say that, I'll just say the short words of BS, but you know, it really is. It's about getting back to, that's what does actually matter in our lives. Having fun, having a laugh, having moments that feel like, you know, that you love somebody or you're in love or you have a funny moment. Or like yesterday, myself and my son, who's 7, we were playing snakes and ladders, and it was so much fun. Something so simple, but it was so much fun. Obviously, I lost the game, but he's 7. But that aside, it was still fun. Why? Because it was connection.
Yeah.
And at the moment, people have lost connection, and they need to start connecting back to reality, connecting back to real people, to their real lives, and stop comparing themselves to something that doesn't even exist. It's just an illusion.
Yeah. You definitely see a lot of that now. And again, I see a lot of people, especially on social media, who they've touched up their photographs. And also increasingly, I see more guys doing that as well, which is quite surprising. And I think that's a shame, because like, you are who you are. And I think if you start touching yourself up, like with Photoshop or whatever, you're setting yourself up for a very big fall.
You know, it happened to us once. We were doing a seminar. This guy came up to me, and it was almost a lot of the time at seminars, you know, if people, they've seen you, they have to remember you. There's one of you to remember. There's thousands of everybody else to remember. So they just have one person. This guy came up anyway, and he was as though he knew me, and which is common, you know, because if they see you familiar, you know, you just feel familiar with somebody. And he was talking, I couldn't figure out, and he was saying his first name, and I just couldn't figure out who this was, because he was like, "Oh, I'm on your Facebook," and it was like, nobody is. There was no reference at all.
Yeah.
And he was in. When I look back, you know, he was about, you know, I don't know, maybe about 5'5". He was like really wide, and he was bald. In his photograph, he was skinny. He had a long hair, which is obviously him from maybe 20 years ago. And there were two totally different people. It's like, why don't you just put up who you are now? Obviously, I didn't say that to them because it would have offended them, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, of course, everyone likes, you know, to brush their hair and, you know, do their face and all the whole lot, and that's fine, and that's just nice. That's self-care. But don't pretend that, you know, that you have a life that you don't have. Just if people relaxed into their lives, it'd be an awful lot better. It really would.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I would say, one source of happiness would be to I know it can be hard, but to be comfortable in your own skin. I think if you achieve that, it makes things a lot more easier.
But it's take the pretense out of it. That's the key for yourself. It's just an illusion. It's just a belief, and within every belief there is a lie. You know, I mean, I remember when I had my son first, and I wrote the book Born to be Beautiful, and it's about how to feel and look amazing inside and outside, getting your confidence back, figure the whole lot, right? And I remember thinking, you know, or people saying to me, you know, you're like a super mom, you can do a career and you can do this. I said, are you for real? I said, I have to change my baby's nappy. Do you think I like that? It actually landed on my nose one day. There's your glamour. You know, he picks his nose, he wipes it on me the exact same as every other mother. The only difference between, I guess, some mothers and other mothers is some people actually say, yeah, they do it too. But the people who don't, that's the problem, is that they're creating a lie for other people. And that's what people are comparing themselves to. And I can tell you, if somebody is listening to this that doesn't feel mentally well or emotionally well or fulfilled, I guarantee you they're questioning, are they good enough? And I ask them, compare to what? They're comparing their lives to a lie, to somebody else's version. It's not, you're not comparing reality here. So you're good enough just as you are. Live your life just as you are. You know, and that's when people do that, everything that you do has meaning. It's not just, you know, what do they think of it? You actually live with meaning. And I had to learn that the hard way. But now, and that's why I'm saying there might be comments under this, because I know I'm real, and I really, I don't care. I don't have to pretend. My son and my family, they know that they get the real me, but they also know that if I'm at a seminar, I'm the exact same person. Or if I'm here at the interview, I'm the exact same person. I'm not going to deny my Mayo accent. I mean, it would be quite nice to have a posh accent, but this is me. So that's what it's about. It's just about being real.
Yeah. Again, I know we're constrained for time. I said there's a whole lot I could talk to you about. I've written out. Donna, basically with the books, with the book BeLIFE or BeLIEf, how does anyone purchase that book, or how do they get in touch with you about anything, or send you any questions, or even get hold of any?
You can go onto my website. My website's been reconstructed at the moment, but it was hacked ages ago, so it's been redesigned with extra security. It's like 4 dots around it now. So DonnaKennedy.com. It's DonnaKennedy.com. People go on there and they can send me an email, or even join me on social media. And the book is the same. The book is on the website and also on Amazon. They can go in there and they can check other things on my Author Central page.
Excellent. Again, anyone listening, I highly recommend that you check out Donna online and do check out her books. The BeLIFE or BeLIEf is a book I'm definitely going to order, because I think hearing other people's stories, I think sometimes it gives you a reason to start to believe in yourself, and you go, well, if this person can change things, then you can as well. Donna, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. It was a lovely interview.
Yeah, it was great having a chat with you. So thank you.